Good morning, everyone. Good morning. May I just say this is a very attractive audience. Coming. Thank you for looking so lovely. It's a real joy to be here. I have been looking forward to this session. David, thank you so much for joining us at the Edinburgh Festival.
Thank you for asking me, and thank everybody for coming. I really appreciate that. It's nice. Thank you. Even though you were probably all out last night drinking.
He speaks for himself. My name's Afua Hirsch. I'm a journalist, author, broadcaster, TV producer, and the advisory chair of the festival this year. So it's a special joy to be here in one of the sessions that I dreamed of making a reality, and now is happening. I am joined by, needs no introduction, I believe, David Harewood, the highly acclaimed actor, also acclaimed author, also talented documentary maker, and I hope we will get a chance to talk about this, soon to be producer, director, all-round media phenomenon. And we're very grateful to have him back because he has been killing it in America for the last decade and is just back to the UK for a new phase. So that makes this an extra special moment to just take stock, talk about what has been and what will be. I want to start by showing you all a clip from a documentary that David made. He's actually made many documentaries, but this one, I think, has had such an impact on our entire conversation around mental health. It certainly has on me. So we're just going to play you a short clip from Psychosis and Me.
It's tough to watch that now. It feels like a different person.
The content of the documentary, or you, the presenter, telling us the story of the documentary?
The person that was in it, that version of me was a very different version.
Take us back to what made you make this film.
I just wanted to find out. I sort of randomly tweeted out, very probably stupidly, that I'd had a, I think it was World Mental Health Day, and I just kind of sent a tweet out saying, you know, this is for anybody who's going through a tough time, you know, just wanted to let you know I had a breakdown, not doing so bad now. Cheers and all the best, look after yourself.
Have a nice
have
day.
a great day. And then got on a plane, flew to Vancouver, and opened my phone, and there were like 40,000 retweets, and like over 1 million engagements. ITV calling me, BBC calling me, everybody wanting interviews, and I suddenly thought, fuck. You know, I'd forgotten I hadn't gone public with it, even though I told all my friends. But and that sort of made me that made me think. You know, I then wrote an article for The Guardian about my experience, and a friend of mine read it and said, a friend of mine who was with me when I was having the breakdown read it, and he said, "That's not how I remember it."
What was it about the way you described it in this kind of first draft of the telling that your friend said that's not how it was?
Well, it seemed to be quite good fun. You know, there's a lot of sort of mania around psychosis. There's a lot of highs. There's a lot of dopamine running through your brain. I've since found this out. So you have these really highs and deep lows, and the highs were really good fun. I miss them actually, but the lows were pretty low, and I'd forgotten all about the lows and I remembered some of the highs. And making the documentary, I was confronted with the reality, and it scared the shit out of me. And it took me a good 3 years to sort of get over it, I think.
What was it about the documentary that was so painful to confront? So you had this narrative that it was all kind of good fun. What did you discover when you made the documentary about the truth about your experience of psychosis?
Well, they'd found my medical records from 30 years ago.
Had you ever seen them yourself?
No, never. And it contained everything I said in the mental institution, everything. I spent 5 days sectioned in a mental institution, and everything I said and everything I did was recorded. And obviously I've never seen it, so there was a section of the film where I had to go and collect these records, and then I was supposed to open them and read them and sort of discuss them on camera. And I opened this first page, and I went, oh, no, I'm not seeing that, no, and cut. And I was really, really disturbed by you're reading your disturbed self. And the first word I saw was really bizarre. The patient believes he has merged hearts with a young black boy. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And I then, I closed that envelope. I didn't read it again for 2 years.
Wow.
But when I wrote my book, I knew I had to look at it. So I then went back and I read every single page, which was a really difficult thing to do. But I realized then that I was just very, very confused about my identity, about my black identity, about my self. I'd sort of become unmoored from who I was. And this, I think my core self, I call it my therapist calls it my core self, my young black self. I sort of was somehow reaching back to that core self to sort of get back in touch with myself. Because I think from the age of probably 8, I don't know, I guess drama school and acting had just completely taken me away from myself.
Well, you write about this so clearly in your book, which I really recommend. I found it remarkable that the struggles that I think many of us grapple with of being black and British, feeling othered in our own country, not having a narrative or a language or a clear way of even self-identifying. In your case, you write, manifested in a crack in your psyche.
Yeah.
And that crack grew.
It grew, and then eventually I sort of fell into the space. I say I fell into the space in between. I mean, and I remember the first moment, as I say in the book that, you know, I was about 5, maybe 5 or 6, and playing outside my house. And, you know, in those days you'd get chased by skinheads, you know, just randomly, for no reason. You'd just be hurling down the street with a bunch of skinheads carrying bricks and bats, and no idea why. But I was playing outside my house one day, and there was this old white guy, old gentleman. So I wasn't particularly scared of him, but he was just glaring at me. And he sort of walked up to me, and he said, "Get the fuck out of my country, you little black bastard." And I sort of went. I didn't understand what he meant when he said his country. And that's why my book is called Maybe I Don't Belong Here, because at that particular moment I thought, maybe this isn't my country. Maybe I'm not from here. And I don't think that idea has, or that realization went away for a very, very long. I tried to cover it and bury it, and even still today, I say to my friends and people who listen, I still have never bought an England football shirt. Never. I've got a Brazil shirt, German shirt, Italian shirt. Never bought an England shirt. There's something in my psyche that I get confused sometimes, even today, about my identity. I'm better at it. I can deal with it better, but something about Britain and England sometimes makes me feel unmoored.
I think we are familiar with the concept, at least, of kind of violent racism as something that people have experienced here. But one thing that I hadn't thought about that's so remarkable to talk about at this event is the impact of TV. Because you talk about how consuming British TV passionately, I mean, as an avid watcher and viewer, fed into your desire to really embrace this Britishness, and that fueled the unmooring when you were told you didn't belong here.
Yeah, you know, you grow up thinking, you know, I do belong, and you know, you're watching your favourites, and my mum and dad, you know, loved British sitcoms. So you know, you're watching Rising Damp and Love Thy Neighbour and Tommy Cooper and Benny Hill, and you that becomes your part of the culture, and you don't question it. And then they tell you, you know, I decide to be an actor and go to drama school, and I'm doing Chekhov and Molière and Dostoevsky, and I'm playing all these Pushkin, I'm playing all these great characters from literature. And then I came out of drama school and the world said to me, you're black. And the press said to me, you can't do that. You're not supposed to do that. You can't play that because you're black. And this was, I mean, it's those days of, thankfully, I hope, gone. But back in the early 90s when we were coming out, when we were that first generation coming out of drama schools and doing Shakespeare and you know, going to the Royal Shakespeare Company, and you know, the press were very dismissive of us and very hostile to this new generation of classical trained black actors. And I don't think I'd really, I hadn't really considered the importance of my colour because it had never mattered before. Well, I didn't think it had mattered before. But every review started with black actor David Harewood, the black actor David Harewood, doing a black version of it was forced down my throat every single day. And I could just tell I was being dismissed in the reviews. They weren't talking about my talent or my interpretation of the character. It was just, everything I did was politicized. My skin became politicized. And I found that, maybe it's probably naive, but I just hadn't contemplated it. I hadn't thought so. I just thought I was English, I was British, none of those things seemed to matter, but it sort of did matter. And it confused me. And
it feels so central to your experience of psychosis because the things that you described in there, in the mix, is the TV you consumed, it's Tommy Cooper's Fez, it's the voice of Martin Luther King, and that assimilationist project that you believed in, this idea that everyone could be friends and family and equal. Yeah. So it manifested in your breakdown? Completely. And you know, the more I look at it now, and looking back on it, and especially having, you know, studied this through my book and spoken to consultants and psychiatrists, how much that sort of core psyche of yourself kind of comes out. A lot of the things that I was, you know, delusions and illusions are part of the experience of psychosis. And let me tell you, man, there is nothing like hearing voices in your head, clear as a bell, that are completely independent. And you're thinking, where is that voice coming from? Loud as a bell. And it was, as you say, it was the voice of Martin Luther King, who sort of reverberates, sort of as often kind of appeared in my life. I mean, it was the first part I played as a kid at school. The teacher gave me the I Have a Dream speech to do, and I remember doing it as a 9 or 10-year-old, not really understanding it, but being surprised because I remember the black parents in the audience were, yes, yeah, you know. And I was like, wow, this is powerful stuff, you know. But it was kind of, I thought, these words are really powerful. So I always remember that speech sort of entering my soul. And in fact, that's what the voice said to me. He said, oh, you did my speech when you were 8, and I entered your soul. And it was all making sense. I'm sitting in my room crying because Martin Luther King is speaking to me from beyond the grave. I mean, it was extraordinary, really extraordinary experience. You're very brave. You're very brave, and I know you didn't necessarily fully imagine the gravity of what you were taking on when you decided to tell this story, both in the public realm and then making a film. What was the experience of making yourself exposed in that way, on camera, and telling that super personal, painful story that you say you hadn't even fully confronted for yourself privately? It was what was that? It was the toughest thing I'd ever done, and I regretted it deeply. There was, I mean, the morning, because during the film I meet two of my old friends who actually took me to get sectioned, and we met. I hadn't seen them in years, and we met and kind of were chatting and laughing. Really, really good friends of mine, and we were laughing and really enjoying our catch up. And then the producer said, okay, let's just get in the car and we're going to go to the hospital. And I was like, okay. And as soon as we started getting close to the hospital, I just started to remember. And I started to recognize the buildings.
and I started to recognize the hospital. And when we pulled into the hospital, I just had this overwhelming sense of dread that I had completely underestimated what I was about to experience. Because I had buried it so deeply that I thought I'd never find it. I hoped I'd never find it. And suddenly it was staring me in the face. And it was really, really scary. Because I was very, very aware of the camera and the lens being on me. And I was experiencing this sort of psychic shock whilst I sort of had all these flashbacks to, I think there were seven policemen sitting on me. 7 policemen sat on me for 3 hours to restrain me. And I was given an emergency tranquilization. Now, and I say this in the book, had I been in America, I would be dead. I probably would be dead. Because I would have been restrained to very, very violently. Luckily, with these 7 people sitting on me, I survived. I could have died. And I was very scared. And I was screaming at the top of my voice, I have to save the boy, which I didn't know this. I knew nothing of this.
Until you read it
Until I read it in my report. I have to save the boy. And this all goes back to that core young black boy that I think I was. That I'd somehow in my head thought, I've got to get back to that kid. That's what I think it was. I think my psyche was like, I've got to get back to that young black boy. And it was scary.
The documentary, you did finish it. It went out to huge critical acclaim, won awards. Probably more importantly to you, reached people and started a conversation, I think generally about psychosis, which is such a taboo topic, and mental health in general, but within the black community, even more so, because black people are so overrepresented in mental health.
Yeah, I didn't know that. And I think the next day, I didn't watch the documentary when it went out. I was absolutely terrified. And I suddenly thought, I should never have done this. When it went out, I was just like, that was the worst decision I'd ever made. And so I didn't watch it. But as soon as it finished, every device in my house was just blowing up. My house phone was going mobile, Twitter, everything was just going nuts. So it was generally people just saying, thank you, and well done, and oh my God, I had no idea. That happened to my mom, that happened to my brother. Now I know what happened to my uncle, Charlie. Everybody was just suddenly, and the charity Mind rang me the next day and said, calls about psychosis rose 170% or something.
As a result of
it, because people didn't know what it was. You know, people just, oh, Dad's had a funny turn. Or, you know, Mom's had a funny turn. Nobody really knew what it was.
And even your own father, you hadn't really understood what had happened because he had.
My dad had a breakdown when I was a child, and I then made a connection immediately to my dad and thought, oh shit, you know, and it is hereditary. It can be hereditary. But as you were talking about being black people being overrepresented in the sector, that I didn't know any of this. And it was, again, once I had read my medical notes and passed them to a consultant friend of mine, she said, you do realize you were given 3 times the legal dose of tranquilizers? Routinely, every day. 3 times the legal amount of tranquilizers. And when I wrote that in the book, I was contacted by a medical professional who works at a mental health facility, and he said that is routinely done, purely on the basis of people are afraid of large black men. So rather than just give them 1, you will give them 3 tablets to sedate, to knock them the fuck out.
And you found references to you as a large black man.
Oh yeah, it was all. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that, but you know, that's the chapter in my book that I call it. I was literally for a whole 3 or 4 days just referred to as a large black man. Gave tablets to large black man in bed, large black man wandering. It was just no, not David or.
Rather trained actor.
Yeah, I was just a large black man.
how do you feel now about the experience of making the documentary, and how does it feel now to be talking about it? Do you still feel exposed?
No, not as much, because I think, this has taken me a long time. It's taken me a long time. That's why, I don't know whether I could watch that documentary anymore, because it does feel like a very different person.
Did you watch it eventually?
Eventually. I went through a very scary period where I was very unsure of myself, and because I was suddenly confronted with all this pain and trauma that I'd forgotten about or buried. You know, the reality of that stuff was really difficult to deal with. And then people would come up to me on the street, and I've never known this before. You know, I've been an actor, fairly recognisable actor for the last 20 years, but the people weren't coming up saying, "Oh, I like that character you played." People were coming up to me and saying, "That documentary, thank you. Can I talk to you about it? Because I'm going through something, or my dad's going through, or my mom's going through something." And I'd often found in that first couple of weeks, I would be crying my eyes out with a complete stranger in the middle of Streatham High Road, bawling our eyes out because they didn't know what to do with their brother who's talking very strangely, not sleeping, wandering around the house, colouring in things on the wall. They just didn't know what to do. There's no manual. People just don't know how to deal with family members who are experiencing psychosis, and it just happens. It's one of the most common forms of mental illness, but no one talks about it because people are ashamed of it. People are ashamed of it because you get taken away by the men in the white coats, and suddenly, to have me suddenly talk about it, I think people were relieved, and I became this sort of draw for people to come and talk to, and I found it really distressing because I couldn't even go shopping. I'd be in Tesco's and somebody would sidle up to me in the baked beans aisle and start engaging me in a conversation about mental health, and it was really painful. But I managed to get through that period, and it was a very difficult period, a very uncomfortable period. But I think having written the book and having sort of got through it now and processed all that pain and trauma, I think I've through to a period of healing, and now I can talk about it. And now I get people stop me all the time, especially young black girls, who just a couple of weeks ago, a young black girl stopped me I was walking my dog, and she said, "I want to be like you one day." I said, "Sorry." She said, "You did that documentary about psychosis." She said, "Yeah, I was sectioned." She said, "But I have to take my tablets every day." So you don't take tablets every day, do you? You don't take tablets anymore. And she'd watched the documentary so many times. And I said, "No, I don't take tablets anymore." She said, "I want to be like you." I said, "Well, listen, make sure you take your tablets, because I'm fortunate. I think it's only 15% of people who suffer psychosis never need further medication. It's 15%. Everybody else has to take their tablets." I told this to her, explained it to her. She said, "Okay, I'll take my tablets. Thank you, Mr. Harewood." So it's still with me, and I still encounter people who experience it, and as you say, it's always wonderful when I get older black people come up to me. Again, I was in Tesco. It's always in Tesco's for some reason. I was in Tesco's, and this older black lady, I could see her looking at me. She just walked up to me, and all she said, it was quite. I kind of did tear up a little bit. She just leaned across and she touched my hand and she went, "Well done, well done, well done." That's all she said. That's all she needed to say. And generally people have just said, "Thank you for talking about it," because it's something that we don't talk about, and particularly in the black community, we don't talk about it.
So have you navigated that threat to your mental stability by really confronting that trauma in such a public way? What about your career? Did you fear that it might have consequences?
Oh my God, I thought it was over. I remember I did, because I didn't watch it, and I never experienced anything like it. As soon as I saw the first advert, I was fucking terrified. I thought, what have you done? What have you done letting people in like that? And I was really, really worried about it. But like I said, as soon as the program finished, all these, every device was buzzing and beeping and ringing, and I eventually picked the phone up, and it was my mom. First of all, she said, first thing she said, fantastic. And as soon as she said that, I was like, oh God, if mum says it was okay, I'm good. And then I started slowly looking at all these messages I was getting, and it was extraordinary. From really quite, there was one, I won't tell you, I won't say his name, but he's a fairly high up executive at the BBC, and wrote me this long email, and he said, I have to apologise because I've actually been showing your documentary to my brothers because our father had a breakdown, and we've never talked about it. And he said, so when I saw your documentary, I showed my brothers, called up my other brother, and we all sat down and watched it. This was before it even went out. Wow. And we said we had a bit of a tear, and we talked about it for the first time in like 30 years. And he said, I just want to thank you because you've allowed us to express something about it. And again, all these letters, and I still get them. I still get people popping up on my Instagram and just saying, you know, your documentary really helped me deal with it. And when I do my book signings, did one at the Hay Festival a couple of months ago, and this woman came up for the book signing, and I could see she was a little bit kind of shaken. I said, are you okay? She just burst into tears. And she said, my son's just been sectioned. And I just came to see you today because I just want to get some hope that he can get through it. And I was straight away just gave her a big hug, and I said, look, you know, it's going to be tough, it's going to be difficult, but you know, he'll get through it. I said, you know, where is he? He's at university, he's away from home. Explained to her that, you know, ages from about 18 to 24 is a very, very common time for adolescents to have issues with their mental health, particularly to have psychosis, and if they're smoking weed. A lot of especially young black men, when I showed the documentary in Streatham, there was literally a line of these young black kids, a line of them, 8 or 9 kids, all queuing up after the Q&A to speak to me, wired as fuck. And they're like, do you think I should start smoking weed? Do you think I should start? I said, yeah, absolutely, 100%, right now, and go and get some help. Next guy, listen, do you think I should start? Yeah. And just trying to let them know that that's a component of it. I'm not saying, you should stop completely, but you know, the last thing you want to be doing when you're experiencing psychosis is smoking weed, because it just exacerbates the delusions, illusions, and overstimulates the mind. So you see it in the street. You see people who are clearly not well, and sometimes I actually try and talk to them and just let them know that they should maybe seek some help.
You talking about the Q&A reminded me to remind you that if you have questions after this, please do send them through the app.
I can just shout them out. There's not that many people.
No,
so
you cannot shout them out. Send them in the app. If you shouted them out, David would probably answer them. But I would like you to put them in the app, please. And then they come up on my screen, and it's just much more seamless. And now let's watch another clip we have. And we're going to talk about that career. So here is a teaser. I'm really glad that that was funny, because you are really funny. Even when you were writing about your experience of psychosis, which is so serious and so dark, I was in stitches, because you're talking about how it took you an hour to brush your teeth because you're brushing your face, and you just have this way of making people laugh. And your career, it seems, from the way you describe it, really did start with you being the class clown at school.
Yeah, I love messing around, you know, and somehow I just ended up doing all this sort of serious Shakespearean stuff, and segued into playing very serious characters.
Very serious, which is very convincing and authoritative.
Which is why I really enjoyed doing the Selfie. You know, the Selfie was a comedy on NBC, CBS, I think, and it just gave me the opportunity to just have a bit of a giggle. And also, if you noticed in that documentary, there's not one English character.
Yeah.
It's all American.
Yeah.
I haven't worked here.
Yeah.
And I don't get the opportunity to work here, which is something that's been very disappointing, because I don't get roles here. All the roles and all of the great stuff I've been doing, Blood Diamond, or I'm playing African, or Homeland American, it's stuff playing other people, and it's fun. But there's just so much of me that I haven't excavated yet. There's parts of me that I haven't reached yet,
which is why we're excited to have you back.
I'm excited to be back.
But let's go back to the beginning. So you went to school. Your teachers conspired to persuade you that you should become an actor.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was always clowning around and always kind of improvising and being a bit of an idiot, really. They call me, I think you call it a disruptive child. I don't know. You guys are all probably academic boffins, but I couldn't keep a straight face at school. I couldn't sit still. I was always messing around. And about a week before, maybe 3 or 4 weeks before I left, a teacher kind of called me up at home and said, "Come into the school." And I went into the school, and he said, "What are you going to do when you leave, Harewood?" And I had no idea. And he said, "Well, we've been talking in the staff room, and we think you should be an actor." A fucking light bulb went on in my head, and I thought, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea." So I sort of, from that moment, that was it. I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And here I am 40 years later.
Well, you applied to drama schools, I think, was it in alphabetical order?
I had no idea about drama schools, no idea.
So before you got anywhere near RADA, you just accepted the first offer you got?
I accepted the first offer that I got. I got turned down from the first 3 places, rejected from the first 3 or 4 places. And then I got into a drama school, which I shan't name, which...
well, you name it in the book, so...
Oh, do we?
Yeah. I was like...
Really?
Who are your lawyers?
Really? I thought I hadn't named it, but well, at the time it wasn't the best, and I was all set to go, and then it's really weird, but I cancelled what I later found out to be the top 5 drama schools. RADA.
You'd already got an offer.
Because I'd already got an offer.
Thought,
RADA, Central, Lambda, Webber Douglas, and Guildhall. Cancelled them all, and for some bizarre reason, the RADA letter never arrived. So I was all set to go to this other drama school. And one day I just got this phone call saying, "Why didn't you turn up for your audition yesterday?" I said, "Who's this?" So it's the principal of RADA. And I lied. I just said, "Oh, I was ill and I couldn't make it." He said, "Well, someone's dropped out tomorrow. Would you like another opportunity?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." Wow. And
that never happened.
Just got on the train, went down, and just thought I've got nothing to lose. So just went down with a sort of carefree attitude, and I got in. And that was it. Never looked back.
And after RADA, it was the stage that you really began your career as a professional actor. Yeah.
And when I came out, I say we were this first sort of generation of classically trained English black actors. We were that kind of first wave. Came out around early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, and Hugh Quashir had just come out and blown people away. Doing Romeo, playing Tybalt, and everybody was raving about this, these British black actors. It was like exciting. And I came out, and my first job was playing Romeo, and for Timber Theatre Company. But it was a tough gig, because again we just got demolished. The critics just really went after it, because they were like, "How dare they do Shakespeare? This isn't really Shakespeare."
Because you're black.
Because you're black, and so every review was really tough to deal with, and that's psychologically. I think that's when I started to get my undoing started, because they were very personal. A lot of them were a lot of the reviews were very personal, and personal attacks on me, to the point where I had to stop reading them, because they were upsetting.
And at an early stage in your career where you're vulnerable to the reviews and how the critics receive you.
I think one of them said, "Oh, he looks more like Mike Tyson than Romeo. What's he doing on stage?" Apparently he went to RADA. Why did they let him in? Why did they let him out? Just really sort of
nasty. You persevered until you felt like you'd reached the end of the road, and then America came calling.
Yeah, I mean, I was, same book, and the weekend I got Homeland, I had 80 quid left in the bank. I was done. I hadn't worked in over a year. And everybody always thinks, oh, successful actor, you've always been successful. But that's not the case. It's a tricky profession, very tricky profession. And I try and tell that to, some of the young actors that it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Why do we have to leave and go to the US
to
be recognized?
There just isn't the scope here. There isn't the, there just isn't the characters. There isn't the landscape for us to play authoritative central characters. It's beginning to happen now. Actors like Sope and Chope, or of course Chope is doing well. Obviously Idris is doing really well. There's the younger Papa is doing really well. Now it's beginning to happen for the younger actors, but back then there was nothing. There was just no way of, no mechanism for you. I remember when I did a show called The Vice years ago, and Ken Stott was the lead, and we did 4 seasons, and Ken decided to leave at the end of the 4th season, and everybody was saying it's got to go to Harewood. It's got to go to Harewood. All the crew, all the writers, the producer was saying that, but ITV wouldn't do it. They were very nervous about it, and in the end, they sort of parachuted in Tim Pigott-Smith to take over. I was really disappointed, but there just wasn't, and there hadn't been to that point. This was about 10 years before Idris did Luther. There hadn't been to that point a black lead on, particularly on ITV. And so once I'd sort of become a mature, beefy lead actor, there just weren't any roles for me. There weren't any opportunities for me. So we got some American representation, and then parts just started flying in. Offers, not offers, but you get scripts all the time, and I remember going to LA and just you walk into a casting and at the top of the page and please send more actors of color. Please send more black actors. We need more diverse actors. Never seen that before. And when I was there, I thought I could work here. And picked up a manager and got to Homeland, and bang. And then after Homeland, it was once you proved yourself over there, you're in.
Once you're the head of the CIA.
But once they know you can do it, you're in. Yeah. No need to queue. Come on in.
Yeah.
And here, have a look at this. Have a look at this. What do you think about that? Do you want to direct? It's just been extraordinary. The last 10 years have been great for me to sort of direct episodes of Supergirl, 7-8 million budgets, per episode. Been fantastic. Really good fun, growing, and come back here and it's cricket.
Still.
Cricket.
What is the plan then, David?
Well, the plan is to start my own company.
Great.
Yeah, my own production company, which I'm starting with Spina over there. And we're looking at producing documentaries and dramas. So creating work, producing work, creating work for myself, creating work for other actors. That's, I mean, who's to say? I'm not saying it'll never happen. The career. I'm sure. All careers go up and down, and I'm sure. Things will come around, but it's. I'm not waiting for it to happen. I'm being proactive about being creative, being front-footed about creating work for myself, and it's really been really inspiring being here. Yesterday, thank you for inviting me. It's been really inspiring being here and being amongst creatives in the TV industry, because things can get done. And I don't know whether maybe everyone thought I was back in America, but people seem surprised to see me yesterday. So. And opportunities are beginning to happen here, like making documentaries, and that's been an exciting avenue for me to discover and pursue, I've just made 2 more documentaries that will come out later in the year, one on blackface, which is really powerful. We talk about programs we watched when we were growing up. Looking at the history of blackface has been extraordinary. And realizing that the black and white minstrel show was still on in this country until 1979. And we found a letter in the BBC archive, which they kept, from a viewer written to the Director General of the BBC, from a lawyer who just come back from America, writing to the Director General of the BBC saying, "Do you understand how offensive this program is? You must take it off. I know I've just come back from America and, member of the NAACP. This is deeply offensive to people of color." And gets a kind of terse response, then continues to write to the Director General of the BBC, and eventually the Director General just tells him to shut up.
Wow.
And literally said, "Shut up and go away." And I just remember as a kid watching that show and thinking, what is this? Even as a 5-year-old, I thought, there's something wrong with this. And so to watch it again during the documentary was painful and extraordinary. And you talk about confused identity. I was watching that thinking, they're not black. What's going on here that I'm supposed to be watching this? And when you watch it again now, it's extraordinary to see it. And to think that this was the most popular form of entertainment. And then you look at the history of it and you find out that minstrel shows were one of the most popular shows in the West End. All across London, there were minstrel shows. Minstrel music was, in the 60s, was the second most popular musical form. The most sold records were minstrel albums.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, people here loved it.
I think your energy for documentaries really comes across. I'm so excited that you're excited about documentaries.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love it. That's another way of telling stories. That's great.
What about directing? So you are now a director, directing on a big scale with Supergirl.
Yeah,
Do you have plans to direct now?
Yeah, I was going to direct a movie about Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn. I was set to direct that this month, but ran into some issues with financing. So, and I only had a very short window because I'm going back on stage in November in the West End, which I'm really looking forward to. Oh, well, I think people know it.
They do now.
They do now. Go back on stage in the West End, and I only had a very short window to shoot this movie, and they were wrangling about certain issues with the script, so I had to postpone that movie. But I'm looking forward to directing that.
I've got to come to the questions. I'm being very selfish hogging you. Does drama school and training help with understanding one's identity? Absolutely, and it was never mentioned when I was at drama school. But I think drama schools have, particularly since George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, have really been going through a bit of an earthquake. And actually lots of people have lost their jobs, and rightly so, because there have been some very strange attitudes towards discussing issues of race. Lots of people have been very tentative about it, or just saying, we just don't want to mention it. No one mentioned it when I was at drama school. In fact, I remember, now I look back at it and thinking, I remember my music teacher at RADA, I wanted to sing jazz, or I wanted to sing some blues. He would only allow me to sing Negro spirituals. Oh my God. And now I look back at it and I always remember thinking, why am I singing? I got plenty of nothing. That's all he would want me to sing. Wow. And so now there's a lot, now that in the drama schools, there's a lot more very talented young black actors coming through drama schools and the British drama school system. And there is much more of a dialogue now about race. There are much more, I didn't do a single play written by a black writer. We never had a black director. There were never any black teachers at drama school. Now there are many more. And the subject of race is much more, they're much more front-footed about the subject of race. So that's a really, really good thing. And I think that
but mind you, this, you know, since doing the documentary, I've been quite astonished at how many young people, particularly young black actors, leave drama schools and have breakdowns. A lot of them do. And after my documentary, I was contacted by so many teachers who wanted me to talk to a young kid who's. Drama school is a tricky experience for anybody. But because you come in with one identity, and you kind of leave with another one because, you know, they kind of break you down a little bit, and that's part of the process of acting is deconstruction, and not everybody's able to sort of reconstruct, and when you include race, you throw race into the mix, it can be very difficult for people to kind of re-establish themselves. So there's a lot of young people. Young black actors who struggle with their identity at drama school.
Joanna says thank you for sharing your journey.
Thank you, Joanna.
What are you most looking forward to this year? And I love this part of the question, how do you keep yourself looking so poised? And I would add, after big nights out as well. Are you a kind of personality type who is able to just work hard, party hard, get your shit together and keep it moving?
Yeah, I am, but at the same time, look, I'm not going to lie to you. You know, the last 4 years, but since the documentary, it was really tough. And writing the book, doing this documentary, finding all that trauma, dealing with it. I've been in therapy for like 4 or 5 years. And that has really helped me get in touch with myself, my own truth. And that's helped me enormously, just to sort of kind of be happy with myself and sort of, I'm not saying I've got it all worked out. None of us have got it all worked out, but I'm probably more content with myself than I've ever been. So I'm feeling okay about things. It's probably where that poise comes from. Maybe.
Another question about how mental health is still, the question asks, where can we see this documentary? I believe it's still on iPlayer.
Yeah, I think it is.
It is still on iPlayer, I think. It was on iPlayer, and it should still be. Mental health is largely stigmatized, and asks if you experience anxiety as well, because the person who's asking the question, who's anonymous, says they're also going through similar experiences.
It's part of our human experience, or for some of us, to experience anxiety.
Do you experience anxiety?
Not necessarily anxiety, but, like everybody, you beat yourself up. I have bad days, where you give yourself a hard time, and I'm no different. And, I've learned a technique now that immediately I get, when I'm having these dark days and I start thinking negatively, I catch myself. And I then start replacing my negative thoughts with positive thoughts. Not only positive thoughts, but just what I'm grateful for. Even if it's just the dog. I walk my dog every day. Every day I walk my dog. And it just gives me so much joy. And so now if I'm having a bad day, I look at the dog and I go, look at that, it's great. and that just makes me happy. And I just think about the things that make me happy. I'm going to say I'm by no means through the woods. I'm by no means got it all worked out. I still have, those, the black clouds, coming in. But they'll pass. They always do. It's part of the experience of life. You're not always going to be, top of the world. So I try now just to understand that, dark clouds blow away, and understand what I'm going through, and just sort of be present and wait for it to clear.
When you look back now at this last 4 years in particular, of making the documentary, of lockdown, of being
I had a great lockdown.
Shut down with your thoughts and getting so much done. I mean, you wrote the book in lockdown.
I had a great lockdown. It's the first time in 10 years I'd stopped. And obviously that's can be a very controversial thing to say, because obviously a lot of people, unfortunately, lost their lives. But for me, I just had opportunity just to stop and understand how fortunate I was, how lucky I was. I was, got a nice house, got a nice garden, so I was sitting in the garden. And that first lockdown, the weather was great, so I was just in the garden having a great time, and just understanding that all the hard work that I'd put in, all those times being away from my family and not enjoying some of the work that I'd done, or being away, there I was sitting in my garden thinking, actually, all of that was to allow you to sit in your garden and have a moment of peace. And I'm very conscious of kind of time, and I've been acting for nearly 35 years now.
Wow.
And great to see this new generation coming through, and I'm really proud of them. And it's great, as I was, when I was casting this film, just seeing all these young black actors come walking through the door. I remember a time when it was either me, him, or him. That was it. and now they're coming in fit, strong, good-looking, handsome. Where the fuck did you come from? and they all kind of say, oh yeah, I used to watch you when I was at school, and thank you so much for inspiring. Thank you so much. You were the guy that oh yeah, that's that guy. I want to be like you. And now they're I'm auditioning them for a role.
How does that feel?
It's great. It's great, and it's touching as well. But also, it speaks to the fact that now it's just rolling. It was just me or Adrian or David Harewood. That was
just
it.
You and Adrian.
That was it. No, the way it was me. First it was Lenny James, and then it was, and we've all been the golden boy. Lenny came out, he was the golden boy. Then I came out, I was the golden boy. And then Adrian came out, he was the golden. So it's you suddenly start realizing that you get further and further away from it. But I've been very fortunate because I kept working, and the American stuff has just been great for me, and gives you that sense of confidence, gives you that confirmation that all's good, because when you're here, it can get slightly depressing. Because it's really funny. A friend of mine said, if a script doesn't pass the fork test, I'm not doing it. I said, what's the fork test? He said, I get a fork, I stick it in the script, and if my character's not on every single page that fork's on, I'm not doing it. I said, fuck, man. And then you get offered your agent sends you a part, and they go, take a look at the part of Johnny, and you're like, who the fuck's Johnny? Nah, I'm not doing that. So it can be frustrating here because it doesn't pass the fork test. But a lot of the stuff I get from America does, and that's been exciting.
David, it's been such a joy to talk to you. I could talk all day, but our time is up. Thank you
Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate that. Great.